a broken window, and a few bad words. That was the reason a 19-year-old man called Pavandeep Daudher had been brutally struck with bats and then bladed in the leg and then left to die in a petrol forecourt. Now, leading up to the events, a chilling warning was sent out by a member of an erratic gang, whom were hell-bent on seriously injuring their victim or worse, killing them over a minor incident. As I said, a broken window. And again, to make matters worse, the 19-year-old victim, Pavandeep Daudher, was not involved at all. However, the Coventry-based gang had chosen Pavqndeep as their dummy in order to teach their rival a harsh lesson. The end result would be Pavqndeep would be treated like a piñata, and he would be struck from all angles by at least 4 different people with bats, poles as well. Each blow was pre-planned, long, vengeful, and full of anger, and when Pavqndeep was no longer moving, the callous gang would operate in a pack, animalistic, and then they would their prey by blading him, leaving the 19-year-old in a pool of red, and ultimately he would die. Pavqndeep was completely innocent. He was on the cusp of just starting his adult life. Their real target was challenor. Now, Pavqndeep was his friend, and the message was an honest and simple warning that read, "One of your friends will end up in curtains." Now, Zach should have taken the warning as serious, but hindsight is easy, especially when you know the outcome. The victim was not directly involved in a dispute, but he was targeted for being friends with 21-year-old challenor. Now, Zach had been involved in an ongoing feud with a gang that consisted of 34-year-old Jason Cornwall, Riley Kavanagh and Kane McCarran, and Ethan Lilly. Now, according to reports, the issues had greatly intensified in the days leading up to the March 31st, 2020 petrol station M on Lockhurst Lane in Folshall. Ethan had previously kept Zach Challenor's friend rooted in place and deprived him of items like money and mobile phone. In retaliation, Zach Challenor and Ethan Lilly had words at Ethan's home, and those words turned into an argument before the two men got into some form of brawl. It ended up being that Ethan's window had been broken, and of course bad words were used. Ethan and his mates could not let it slide because Ethan's mum was a businesswoman and she was upheld in the community, and Ethan was not going to let anyone destroy his reputation for being a gangster and a bad man, and his mum's reputation for not causing trouble in the area. So Ethan Lilly, Riley Kavanagh, Kane McCarran and Jason Cornwall had then met up and started branching off ideas of how to deal with Zach Challenor. The gang was peed off that Zach had the gall and the brass to put a window through in Ethan's home, and they needed retribution. They either wanted to chase Zach and record him and make an example of him by humiliating him and putting videos on social media, or they were going to physically teach him not to mess with a gang by striking him with bats. So, Jason Cornwall, Riley Kavanagh, Kane McCarran and Ethan Lilly had formulated their plan. Equipped with items such as baseball bats, blades and poles, the gang had secured a Ford Cougar that had been stolen a few weeks prior, and now it was also fitted on false plates. They then drove through Coventry looking for Zach's distinctive Audi A3 in silver just before 7 p.m. Now, the Audi A3 was spotted just before 11 p.m. on the petrol station forecourt on Lockhurst Lane, Coventry, on March 31st, 2020. Now, stopping outside the shop and drive store, Ethan Lilly and co had decamped their cars. They were also wearing masks, and in their hands were bats, blades, poles, and other items, and then all signs of mayhem broke loose. They ran after their victim. Despite their target being Zach, 19-year-old Pavandeep Daudher was struck on the shoulder, the back of the head, the ribs, the lower back, the legs, the thighs, with bats and poles. The 19-year-old was completely swamped, From the sheer force of a wooden bat and a metal pole connecting with skin and bones, Pavqndeep had stumbled sideways onto the ground, and then he slowly rolled onto his back. Looking up, Pavqndeep came face to face with Jason, Ethan, Riley, and Kane. Despite their faces being covered, their voices was distinct. The 19-year-old's bag was then ripped from his shoulders, and then Pavqndeep was bladed in the leg once. The entire incident was captured on CCTV. Now, when Zach noticed that Pavqndeep, his mate, was being struck with a bat and had then been bladed, what Zach did was he ran for his life. He ran, got back into his car, and then fled the scene, the LDA-1 zipping off the forecourt. However, everyone then got back into the Ford Cougar, and they then pursued the 21-year-old. The Cougar had actually ploughed into the LDA-3, bringing the car to a stop. The LD had spun on impact, and Zach's window had been broken on Station Street East. The gang had then taken the car keys from the LDA-3. They then confiscated a bag and a jacket from Zach in an act that was meant to humiliate the 21-year-old. Zach was then bladed in the foot for good measure. Now, once Ethan, Lily, and Cole were happy with their revenge, the Ford Cougar was disposed of. Police found the car on a hill in the Willenor area, completely torched out, beyond recognition. As for Pavandeep Daudher, he was actually taken to hospital when concerned members of the public had called 999. After being transferred to hospital, sadly, Pavqndeep was pronounced dead a short time later, which of course broke his family's heart. When police looked through CCTV, they were able to recognise some of the people involved, and 34-year-old Jason Cornwall, 20-year-old Riley Kavanagh, 18-year-old Kane McCarran, and 24-year-old Ethan Lilly had been arrested in connection with the and police believed that they had carried out a pre-planned revenge incident in retaliation for a low-level quarrel that Pavqndeep was not involved in. Now, when questioned, each member of the gangs each denied carrying out the incident, but they were found guilty following an 8-week trial at Warwick Crown Court back in October. Out of the gang, there was only one person that gave evidence, and that was 24-year-old Ethan Lilly. He explained that he had not been the one that had actually carried out the specific blading. He did admit to being there, and then he tried to pass the blame onto his mates by ridding himself of almost all responsibility. And due to the fact that Ethan had passed the blame onto the people that he called his mates, and then got his mom to write character references and pals as well, the members of the gang who were on trial with him labelled Ethan a grass, and they says, "You better be careful what happens to you." Jason Cornwall was jailed for 11 years, while Riley Kavanagh and Kane McCarran were jailed for 9 years. And as for Ethan Lilly, he was jailed for 14 years. All members of the gang were found not guilty of the but they were found guilty of the robbery and also manslaughter. That's why they got their long sentences. Now, the judge actually commended Ethan for giving evidence, though they did say that Ethan's recollection of events may be exaggerated or peppered with fibs and lies. But again, the judge did thank Ethan for writing a letter to the victim's family, and it showed that he actually had genuine remorse for what he had done, and he called it one of the worst decisions that he could have made in his life at this point. Now, Ethan Lilly also knew what it was like to lose friends due to gang issues and conflict, as previously his other friend had been aimed in a blading. Does the crime match the sentence? Let me know. Stay safe.